So I'm going to make a small sidestep because of the nature of this conference. I actually never do that, but I ended up finding myself publishing a paper in the Journal of Religion and Health with a Islamic scholar who contacted me actually at the same time that Rabbi Danny Nevins from the Jewish seminary in New York approached me and said, well, what are the halal and kosher aspects of this technology? And I'm relating it to stem cells because especially the discussion with Danny was very, very intricate because he was kind of wanting to show that if you make this stuff, this cultured meat, it's parve, so it's neither milk nor meat, which would be for kosher people very, very convenient because you don't need two kitchens, basically. The other thing that he wanted to show, apparently he's walking, in New York. Everybody eats bacon, and it smells very good and it tastes very good. But he can't eat it, of course, because it's a pig, so it's dirty. So he was trying to argue, well, if these stem cells in the end are as far removed from the original one as you can get, could pigs become kosher, right? And it's an interesting concept because, when, of course, genetically the cells are still exactly the same. But if we, one of the things that we found out in medical research, I did medical research for a long time, we found out in medical research, this whole idea of regenerative medicine, you have a defective organ, let's say a liver, you take stem cells from the person, you cultivate them, you make a liver out of it, and you implant that back into the person. The idea was there would not be a rejection of that thing. Turns out not to be entirely true. If we cultivate cells outside of the body for some time and you plant them back into the body, they are alien. They are considered alien and you have rejection mechanisms. So I was trying to come up with Danny to an argument, yes, these cells can be sufficiently different from the original donor so that it becomes something else. By the way, they're very similar, the Torah and the Quran are very similar in their texts. You cannot actually take a piece of a living animal and eat it. So you have to actually slaughter the animal. And you also cannot use blood. Okay, back to science. We are, of course, to make a product, we also have to scale up. We can do that in 25,000 liter bioreactor, so it will look like these tanks over there. And the way we do it, and I wanted to show you this because it's just one of the more beautiful pictures that we can generate in the lab. You actually have to, the blue guys are all the cells, the small blue dots, and they grow on microcarriers that are suspended in that tank. So that way you can convert something that is essentially not very scalable, cell culture, into something that can be scaled. So, all right. By the way, the reason why I mentioned also the religious stuff is not only because it's interesting, but also because what is interesting is that there's no product yet. And there's not going to be a product for another 3 or 5 years on the market. Yet, all sorts of people are starting to wrap their minds around this from different perspectives in what is this going to mean? How are we going to use this? Can we use this for our people? So, and also, people are doing lifecycle analyses. Lifecycle analysis typically are meant to get everything that is used for a particular process, calculate it, measure it, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, is there efficiency, are there problems, that sort of thing. But it actually never is used for a product that doesn't exist yet. But here, people were enticed to start doing life cycle analysis. This is from the University of Oxford. You have to take it with a grain of salt because there are a lot of assumptions in it, but because the outcome is pretty favorable for me, I report it anyway. They calculate that the amount of land that you would save is 90%, water is 90%. You would have to think of what's going to happen with that land then, but water is 90%, that's fine, we can drink it. And then energy, and there the jury is still out, whether this is a reduction in energy or not, depending on, again, the quality of your assumptions. It also has to be sustainable. It also has to be sustainable, meaning that every component that is in that hamburger, and there were a couple of components that were not sort of unlimited supply, you have to get rid of those. Most particularly serum. There's been a lot of debate around serum in this. It's a traditional thing for cell culture. And I just want to show you, it's kind of a boring slide, but we are actually cultivating the cells in the absence of serum. Here on the right are 8 conditions that are serum-free, and you see the cell growth over time from day 1 to day 6. There's an exponential cell growth even in the absence of serum. We also grow them in the absence of antibiotics, which is for cell culture somewhat unusual, but it can be done. So we are trying to approach it from the beginning to make it a completely sustainable process. Then, of course, it needs to be meat, so it needs to have the right color, the right texture, and the right taste. And I'm not going to go into the details because of time, but trust me, we can fix those things. And then in London, 2013, the press sort of said with big headlines, yuck, and Frankenstein food, and all those kind of interesting qualifiers. And that was kind of coming from the medical field. That was kind of a new aspect of this for me, because I thought this is the best invention since sliced bread. So please, accept this and be really happy. But no, not everybody was happy, and it was kind of puzzling, right? Because nobody could really explain what that actually was, that sort of feeling. And so my dilemma was this. This is Weisswurst, right? And I use this example because I'm here in Germany. In the Netherlands, I use the frikandel. Apparently, people know the frikandel. So who of you has ever eaten a Weisswurst? Quite a few. I guess it's more popular than I thought. Okay, even. So, do you know what's in it? Somebody nods yes. Yeah. The other ones don't know what's in it. Do you want to know? I don't know exactly, to be honest, either, but it's probably a decent product. But the thing with, I guess you're more attached to this than we are attached to the frikandel, I guess. So in the Netherlands, there are all sorts of horror stories of what is in a frikandel. All sorts of things that are actually not in that sausage, but the story is there. And still people eat it. And people really almost always say, well, please don't tell me what's in it because I want to keep eating it. I want to keep eating it. So don't tell me what's in it. Which is interesting. So we are perfectly capable of eating stuff that we don't actually know what's in it or how it's being made. But it's because a lot of people have eaten it, and you can see they're all alive. So you gradually develop trust in a food like this. And it's also a regional product. And of course, you trust completely your German manufacturers and your German government in regulating this at all levels, so it becomes a trustworthy thing. So that's part of it. It's a big thing, safety and trust. We are genetically programmed, biologically programmed not to eat stuff that we don't know. If you go into the forest and you kind of randomly start to pick mushrooms without knowing what you're doing and you're going to eat them, chances are you're going to poison yourself, right? So we tend not to do those things. So that requires time, and it requires early adopters and that sort of thing, and we can get there. The other thing, and it was kind of alluded to this morning, is that we want to have control. We want to have the illusion of control. The illusion of control also of how our food is being produced. And when you see a cow in the pasture, you think, oh, well, this is nature, this is natural, this is 1.5 million years of evolution, so it's, we cannot mess with it too much. And now we are going to convert it into something that's made by people. People make mistakes, they may be fraudulent, they may put all sorts of things in there that we don't want. So this is a sort of a classical sort of mix of technology on one side and how it's going to be implemented in society on the other hand. And we tend to sort of converge those. So we developed a story where We have a small petting zoo, let's say in the center of Karlsruhe, and it has 3 cows, 3 pigs, 3 chicken. Children from the primary school feed them, they pet them, they give them names, all very romantic. But in fact, they're actually stem cell donors. And so once in a while, we poke them in the butt. And we grow in a barn next to the petting zoo. We grow meat for the entire community. You can visit the barn on Sundays. You have more control over how your food is being produced than you currently have, which goes to illustrate that there's a difference between technology and how it's going to be implemented in society. And then the other thing which I realized afterwards is there's culture, right? Meat is culture. It's supremacy over other species. It's our hunting sort of instincts. It's fire. It's masculine. It's power. It's barbecuing. And a lab is not really a very romantic place. Right? It's not. There are no cowboy movies about the lab. I'm thinking about starting a soap series like ER, but then playing in the lab, so that you kind of humanize the lab environment for this purpose.